Hi, my name's Heather. I'm an animal shelter worker, primarily with cats. I've been working with animals for over 15 years now and in shelters for about 10 years. I'm making this video to explain a situation that happened to me at a shelter that I recently worked at that made me re-examine how we run our animal shelters. And I just wanted to make a video to sort of see if other people have experienced stuff like this. I mean, I know other people have experienced issues where management's just not listening to you and animals aren't getting the care they deserve, but this is something I experienced and I just wanted to share. So recently I was fired from my job as a cattery attendant at an animal shelter for giving cats litter. To give some context, this particular shelter, Providence Animal Center, in Media, Pennsylvania. It was formerly the Delaware County SPCA. It uses shredded newspaper as cat litter. And as you can see from the pictures on the screen, it's like hamster bedding. Now, this is in theory not super unusual for shelters to give a cheap litter alternative to cats when they first enter the system, especially if they have a huge influx of cats. It's not, unheard of. For example, like I worked at Cecil County Animal Services in Maryland and they use wood pellets. You can get 50-pound bags of them at Tractor Supply for like 10 bucks. So it makes sense to start them out on that because if they use it, great. If not, you switch them to something they will use, and it's typically clay. And it's simple as that, and it's very important. Um, Only at this shelter, that was not possible. It was a battle for each suffering cat to receive the proper necessities to feel comfortable. And the bottom line is so many of kitty, so many of the cats did not use the shred. And it's something that many other people over the years had noticed, volunteers and staff, and complained about. But nobody ever did anything about it. And by not using the shred, I don't just mean going outside the box, which happened a lot and is a major issue on its own. Because like making cats sit in their own fecal matter and urine is not acceptable. So that would happen, but I mean, cats will not go to the bathroom for, days at a time. They would hold it. And there were definitely and I some people would say, well, how can you tell the difference between like a cat that is just nervous and holding it because of that or, whatever. There'd definitely be cats that enter the shelter system and would shut down. They wouldn't eat, they wouldn't go to the bathroom. And this is not that. Um, this is definitely their bladders are full. They are uncomfortable. And if you do eventually sneak in litter, which I did because I had to test out a lot of these theories that people were telling me about, um, they would go into the litter box immediately and be there for like, 10 minutes peeing and pooping, um, just getting it all out. But they would hold it. And this is why shelters typically keep logs to monitor, if they're eating and drinking, well, if they're eating and going to the bathroom. Something Providence did not do, by the way, which I always found really strange. But, you know, standing in our way of making these cats feel comfortable and getting them the necessities they needed were the people that ran the shelter. They had a procedure that we all had to abide by. And obviously, I got fired not doing that. But the procedure was if the caretakers noticed the cat's not using the shred, they were to submit a vet slip. When a member of the medical team got the vet slip, when they had time, because oftentimes they're understaffed, they would check on the cat, monitor them, like they would assess them, then give them a litter monitoring card. And I'll put that up on the screen so you can see what it looks like. And after 3 consistent days of not using the litter box, and this is in addition to what we had noticed to begin with, a med team member will give them a yellow dot on their cage card to denote that they medically need litter. And there was always, and not to mention the fact that there was always an amount of distrust coming from management and the staff in general about anyone wanting to give cats litter. So right off the bat, we were always met with doubt. So that's why when the med team came down, they were just sort of trained to assess the cat and sort of doubt any volunteers or staff that, that was actually happening. In fact, some volunteers were banned from submitting vet slips because they submitted too many and they just had to be lying because cats obviously are going to the bathroom and they're just, you know, we just really love litter apparently. I'm staff, but a lot of volunteers got crap for this, like, you know, worse than worse than anybody, I think, because they couldn't be fired, you know. Um, and I'm a prime example of what happens when staff members do stand up for it. But we had to adhere to this process, even when we knew these cats were suffering. Um, and even though so many people agreed it was awful, from management to the med team themselves, no one wanted to do anything about it because it would cause tons of issues that no one wanted to deal with. And to a point, I get it. No one wants to lose their jobs and no one wants to cause issues at work. But we are in this industry for the animals. We fight for them, we advocate them for them. When did we lose that perspective? I don't understand. Um, this always perplexed me. We we get to the point where we're just, you know, so complacent and saying yes, but these animals are suffering. And they were so serious about making sure that cats did not get litter. They had litter monitors throughout the day coming into the cat room to check each box to make sure that no cat had litter that wasn't supposed to. And if they did, it had to be dumped out and replaced with shred. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And meanwhile, we had so many other issues that were not being addressed. They only did rounds once a week, and sick cats in general were not being treated, and that they were not being treated correctly. Stressed cats were being ignored and put out in situations that were making them more stressed, like in the lobby. They had lobby cages. We had untreated cases of things like lice and caleci and other illnesses that would have been noticed if the med teams were looking for these things, but instead they're monitoring for litter. And, you know, I've heard people say it's just litter, and they're really thinking that the reason why we want to give these cats shred litter over the shred is because we just hate the way it looks or something. Because don't get me wrong, the shred is disgusting, and I've been putting up pictures throughout this video to show you what it looks like when it's used. It is disgusting. It spreads germs. There's fecal matter everywhere. It's not absorbent. So if they do use it, it's incredibly dirty, and the spread of germs is just immense. Um, but it's not just because of that. These cats are not using the litter box. But I need people to understand that this is about much more than just litter. And you know, everybody knows that animal shelters can be a very scary, stressful place for so many animals. Cats in particular, they have such a difficult time adjusting to shelter environments. They will completely shut down and waste away. I mean, they're surrounded by unfamiliar smells and what they might construe as predators. Everything they known has been torn away from them. All comforts are gone. And I've seen cats shut down completely, and I will never forget the names of those cats that were abandoned at the shelter to die terrified. And it will stick with me forever. But they've allowed themselves to waste away. You can, syringe feed them, you can do whatever you want, but they will just shut down. And, it's not just older cats. Some of them would be 2, 3 years old. They just don't understand why they're there. They were comfortable and now they're not. And that's what they don't understand. And people really do not think that animals can get depression or anxiety. And they really don't grasp it if they do get those mental illnesses, how bad they can really get. And it's so bad that in recent years, we've had to rethink how we handle animals in these situations. We've had to rearrange shelters to accommodate what is acceptable conditions. Organizations like the ASPCA will have what they consider to be like acceptable shelter standards available to reduce this stress. I'm going to put the list up on the screen. It's going to be, they link it on a lot of different sites like Best Friends Organization, things like that. But some of it's just common sense, cage size, location, enrichment times, litter box placement, litter box size, things like that. But it doesn't go over the importance of litter type. And it absolutely should, because that is where our huge problems are, because you have nonprofits like Providence Animal Shelter who, love to call themselves no kill and say they're amazing, but and they're abiding by all what is acceptable with the shelter standards, but they don't care about the litter part. And that is a huge factor. And if anybody doesn't already know, the litter box is such an important factor for cats in determining their behavior and health concerns. I'm sure everybody realizes that, but I really want to reiterate that if they go outside the litter box, that's not normal. So many of these cats come into the shelter, they're older, they've had clay their whole lives. They do not recognize the shredded paper as something to go to the bathroom in. And we've seen it in kittens too. Kittens will not be properly litter trained because they don't understand what the shred is. They think it's bedding or they think it's something to play in. So they would go home with people and people would call and say, what's going on? My kitten is going outside the litter box. You know, it going outside litter box is a great indicator that something is wrong. They usually do not want to go outside the litter box. Cats' natural instincts tell them to bury their waste as to not attract predators. In the wild, they want to, dig up a hole, go to the bathroom, bury it. So a sandy, dirt-like substrate is preferred for a reason. It's to hide their scent from predators, and to them, it's dangerous to leave themselves exposed, especially in an already scary situation where there's so many foreign smells and possible threats. Just because an animal doesn't live out in the wild anymore doesn't mean those instincts go away. And I think we should all know that about, animals by now. They still have these things ingrained in them. And a lot of times when they get in these situations, it's fight or flight and they can't help it. But, to, give you some background of who was in charge of these situations and who I had to deal with this is Joanne Zoll. She's the CEO. And Dr. Kim Belwin is the medical director, and she okayed it. And they were in charge of keeping this in place, and we're very serious about keeping it in place. Um, and to be clear, I met with both of them. I tried to talk to them. I presented evidence to try to appeal to them, but and I'll go over this in subsequent videos. But I was told no, they are not changing this policy. This policy is not negotiable. Basically, I was literally um I was, targeted, especially for trying to advocate for these cats. And, you know, it, it's unbelievable. Um, but I did end up getting fired. This is after a couple of meetings. And again, I'm going to go into it in another video. But, after meeting with Joanne, Zoll, and Dr. Kim and going over these things, I noticed they doubled down. They started sending litter monitors all the time. And before it was just, dump the litter, blah, blah, blah. Um, Now because so many people had quit at that point, I did not have any supervisors anymore. The only person that was above me that was acting as my supervisor was the chief operating officer. And she since quit, by the way. Everybody is quitting. But yeah, all of my managers weren't there at the time, so everything was going directly towards me. I was the only cat room staff member, and things had just doubled down. And one night they, told me to dump a ridiculous amount of litter boxes, and med staff was understaffed, and they were not able to get to a lot of the vet slips that we had submitted. So some of these cats I'm not leaving them for days without going to the bathroom, and that's just the way that is. And I told them that that's just cruel. But I was expected to do so, so they told me to dump the litter boxes. I did because my plan is I'll dump them, but then I'm giving them litter again, once I think they need to go to the bathroom. But I did write an email and I'll put the email up on the screen and I'll talk about it, but I thought it was respectful, the email that I sent, but I said, I think this is wasteful. I think it's pointless. And I don't understand the reasoning behind this. So I got a response back saying the next day they would meet with me in the afternoon to talk about it. And what they meant by that was they were going to give me my first and only write up. And, that was that. I didn't raise hell about it, but I did try to talk to them and they just didn't want to hear it. They were like, this is just the way it is. And that very night, after I was written up for the very first time, that very night, they had noticed another litter box had issues. And keep in mind, again, only staff member there, and it gets very busy. Um, they had noticed another one. So after, you know, it was going to be my weekend, on my weekend, they called me and fired me. So there was no negotiation. There was no, we're writing you up again. It was just, we're terminating you immediately. I have the termination letter. I'm going to go over it, but I definitely want to put it up on the screen because I felt that it was just absolutely insane. Um, but I'm going to go into more details in another video, but I know I keep saying that, sorry. But this is what these cats are having to deal with. And it's thanks to the management at Providence Animal Center. And it needs to end because this is cruel. And I don't care that I don't have a job anymore. It wasn't a great job, to be perfectly honest with you. I was paid less than I was paid in most other shelters. But I I wanted to be there for those cats and I would still be working there trying to fight for those cats. And they pushed me out because of it. So I'm gonna stop this here, and I'm gonna pick it up in the next video, um, just to give you a little bit more background. But thank you for watching, and I hope that you'll watch my other videos. Thank you.